Yeah, so Grant, your work focuses on redesigning how work actually works. I mean, help our listeners separate that idea from normal conventional wisdom and just kind of put your perspective on what that actually is, what that means.
Yeah, again, my name is Grant Harris, and I am a consultant and keynote speaker on neuro-inclusive performance and the future of work. And I help enterprises and public sector organizations to save time, keep talent, and deliver value. Um, Ultimately, the work that I do is about helping organizations uh, fix processes and not people. People aren't broken, although we all have our trials and tribulations. But really, in the workplace, systems are broken. Uh, Traditional and linear systems that people have inherited from uh, millenniums ago and from different ages in this country, and they don't fit the mold anymore. And organizations who are doing things in the same way and getting the same result and blaming it on their people, that's a systems issue. So the work that I do in terms of helping redesign work and how it gets done is not to look at the identify as an individual. That's all well and good, and we should all be able to show up as individuals. But I identify the systems and processes and where they're broken and how to fix those, and not the people that are tied to them, and not the people that are ultimately paying the price for those failed systems. So that's really the work that I do and
Mhm.
how I do it when we talk about redesigning how work gets done. It's how work is done not for the few in the majority, but for the all in the majority. So that ultimately we have happier and healthier and more profitable workplaces. So that we don't have to have the levels of disengagement that we have. So we don't have to have the levels of turnover and burnout that we do.
Mhm.
And we don't have to have the level of stress that we do on, and when I say stress, I mean the stress on the pipeline, on the talent pipeline. Many leaders today operate under the impression and under the delusion that there's no talent out there, or that the talent out there doesn't want to work, or that the talent that is out there is somehow broken and unworthy. And that's just not the case. What's broken and unworthy is the systems and the process by which we evaluate that talent. Specifically, on take autistic people for an example, 80 to 85% of autistic people in this country are either under or unemployed. That's not an autistic people problem. That is a systemic problem. Organizations interviewing the same way, asking the same questions,
Mhm.
looking for performance, looking for theater, not testing for capability and competency, which is what we should be doing. So
Hey,
that's the work
Grant,
that I do. And when we talk about redesigning work, that's the lens that I take.
okay, there's a lot to unpack there. One question that came to mind with looking at it from a consulting perspective, as someone who is outside the chaos, it takes a certain individual to, I mean, to look at the system, but to ask the question, is the system capable of meeting what leadership is expecting it to push out? Have you came across that question in your line of work where, I mean, it's not the people, it's the system, but what they're expecting is unrealistic, and having to have them adjust their expectations seems to be the biggest problem, I think.
There are lots of big and small problems. It's not about how big the problem is. It's about where it's like a pressure point. It's where to apply the pressure and where to apply the focus, no matter how big it is. Like they say, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So it's not how big the problem is.
Okay.
It's about where to pinpoint the pressure at the right time. So this is where systems and diagnostics come in. And I run a diagnostic that's based on five metrics that tells an organization exactly pinpoints exactly where system failure is. Tells you where you're doing great, but also tells you where you're not doing well and uh, where leakage is present. So, and then the question is not, well, how do I change leadership's mind? Because you can't change anybody's mind. You can change behavior. You change behavior, and that's when you change the result. So I don't work in the
Yes.
space of changing your mind or anybody else's mind. I work from a space of showing people that here is this system, and this system is leading to a particular result. If you do not like that result, that is how we have to change this particular system in order to get a different result. That has nothing to do with how you think or feel about the result. It's a diagnostic and it's a process that you can be seen and that can be uh, verified and validated through data. So this is not an emotional conversation. There's nothing wrong with emotions. Everybody has them. You can have them in a place. But when you are looking at a leakage problem, and when you're looking at turnover, when you're looking at increased labor costs, when you're looking at higher medical premiums because people are sick more often, when you look at $9 trillion lost in annual GDP because people are disengaged from the work that they're doing, all of these things are system problems and not just people. So you can't fix one person and expect that all of those things do a 180 and go the opposite way. But if you alleviate the pressure within the system based on data, and when you activate, and when excuse me, when you diagnose, and then when you activate, and then you engage. So that's a three-step process in my T factor. And what's the T factor? The T factor is focused on the three T's, what I call time, talent, treasure. So how are we utilizing time? How are we utilizing the talent that we have? And what type of utilization from a treasure perspective or a money and financial resource perspective? Well, that's the T factor. And within that, these diagnostic questions come to the forefront. And it's not based on just what you think, it's based on what the data shows, and it's based on where we move a system left, right, or up or down.
Interesting. For those that don't know what leakage is, if you can give us an example of that, and with neurodiversity, performance, and the future of work, how do those intersect in ways that leaders still don't see to this day?
So, leakage is a common term for underutilization of capability, meaning a person in their job is not utilized to their highest performance. So that means that they are not producing or maximizing their productivity based on their individual level of capability.
Knew
And when
it.
you have that miss, when you're missing that, then that's when you are leaking money. You're either paying that person too much and you're not getting the result from them. And I'm going to make a strong distinction. I'm not an advocate for productivity for productivity's sake. Many people are productive and they end up burning themselves out. Productivity is not the end goal. Productivity is a result of effective and efficient processes. Effective and efficient processes means that we utilize not just one person, but the entire system, the entire organization is utilized effectively and efficiently to the point where they're maximizing the outputs that lead to the outcome that we want. So your report that you produce is an output. That's not an outcome. That's a thing that's created. How much time does it take for a person or department to create that report or that thing? How much money is spent on that person or that thing? So these are the data points that are looked at. And are you maximizing the efficiency of that? Meaning, are you getting to the outcome as quickly as possible without the rework, without the extra meeting, without the miscommunication and uh, misclarification, which all leads to leakage because you're leaking time. That little meeting takes time. That meeting that could have been an email takes time. The rework because the expectation up front wasn't clarified. That takes time. So when you're losing time and you're leaking time, you're also leaking money. From the other end of utilization, how are you utilizing the tools and resources in your finances in the treasure box? So if from a financial perspective, your operating costs, your labor costs, these types of things, if they are not being used effectively and efficiently, you're either overpaying for something or you're missing out on the market because your competitor was able to provide uh, that level of value for that employee. So these are things when we talk about leakage that an organization doesn't always see, it's hidden and it's hiding in plain sight. And what ends up on the balance sheet, what ends up on the P&L is not that, oh, this person was let go and that person was let go. What they see is they're in the red. What they see is the last 3 quarters have been lagging. What they see is their competitors are hiring faster and keeping more people. That's what I mean when we talk about leakage. This is what I mean when we talk about redesigning how work gets done. It's not just about showing up and identifying. I identify as an autistic, black heterosexual man in America. I'm all about identifying. But beyond that, I'm about identifying the areas in work that need to be stopped up, that need to be addressed in order for people like me and people like you to maximize their personal efficiency.
So we're considered the leakage in the data because we're being underutilized because of these issues that we have dealt with since a child. I mean, when it comes to maybe face-to-face contact, where it appears we lack confidence, well, that's not the case. That's just how we were raised with our issues. So if we were in a position that we just happen to know by the back of our hand, we would own it. We would be maximizing our capability. There would be no leakage. But if there's a position that we are just learning, we're not utilizing our potential, is what you're saying.
Correct. And that happens in communication. That happens up front um, and this is not a culture conversation. We work in cultures. Culture isn't built because people want to just feel good. Culture isn't built just because people see themselves. That's part of what it is. The culture that I'm talking about is the culture of work and not just self-identification. Self-identification is part of the whole. It's a piece of the puzzle. But if you just have self-identification and you don't meet in the middle with how work is translated in the business world to the outcome, then it's still disjointed. You're still missing. Um, and that again, that leakage at that point. And if leaders want to not change anything, nothing will be broken. I tell leaders that all the time. If they say, "Oh well, we're not ready to change that for this," I say, "Okay, it's not going to be broken, but you're still going to, at the end of the day, you're going to be leaking that time and that talent and that treasure. And at the end of the day, you're missing out on a competitive advantage because if you're not making these changes now in terms of the organization and in terms of leadership, and if you're not having these conversations, and if you're not willing to do the internal work, then you're lagging. And if you're lagging, then ultimately you end up being obsolete. And no organization wants that because they're going to lose all their people. They're going to lose all of the people resources and the financial capital that they have invested thus far into that business. And that's not good for the business of America. That's not good for the business of the economy if businesses are running that way and work gets done that way.
So you were touching on it a little bit with culture. I'm trying to connect it with reducing DEI, risk of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Can you explain a little bit about that with culture?
So early on in my career of doing this work, I've written 3 books, and a couple of them are based on diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility. And I wrote those books before my understanding of myself as an autistic person. I stand behind the material that I wrote because I believe in the true meaning of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The three separate words, not the one acronym that has been politicized. However, this conversation in the work that I do now is not a DEI conversation. It is a performance conversation. It is a utilization conversation. It is a capacity building conversation. And if you're doing all of those things, if you're looking at utilization, if you're interested in capacity building, if you are looking at performance and how not only the whole, but the pieces of the whole perform, then you inherently will achieve parts of the DEI work without it ever being about DEI. DEI is not an outcome. This conversation is not about outcomes, it's about constraints. It's about architecting a different way of doing work so that the maximum amount of people can achieve the maximum amount of result in an effective and efficient way. So these are the conversations that I have with leaders because you haven't heard me talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion at all. Because if these other things are happening,
Yeah.
the byproduct of those things happening would be diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's maximize the people that have these skills over here. Let's look at the way that we communicate and have conversations in the onboarding process. Let's look at how we cut time. Let's look at how we save time. These types of things. Because when you look at people who think differently and they bring a neuro-inclusive performance edge, it's clear that in the organizations that I have led and the conversations that I have with leaders, that there are people in the organizations that can save time by seeing around the corner. They see the forest of the trees and they see the problem coming before it actually happens. The
Yeah.
people who are asking questions, they're asking deeper questions to not necessarily poke holes in the process, but because they're thinking on a different wavelength and that they can think three layers deeper so that
Yes.
again, the product or the process that is being built can stand the test of time. Well, these things again, what goes back to the key factor and saving that time and keep getting the most out of your talent, not again from a productivity perspective, but from a capability and competency perspective.
That's really good. I do like that last part. Well, productivity over competency. If I just want to apologize. There's construction going on outside, so if you hear anything like that happening, there's nothing I can really do at that point. But being very clear with shifting from people to fixing systems, I just gotta ask, like why is that mindset shift so uncomfortable for the leaders that you've encountered?
Because it requires clarity. This whole conversation requires clarity.
Yeah,
You have to
exactly.
be clear. You have to be clear. All of the jargon, the double clicking, the frameworks, and I've built frameworks. I'm not saying that frameworks don't have a place, but they don't have a place in positions with executives that are looking to diagnose a problem, activate the work around that, and to stabilize for the future. Frameworks don't get that done. And I can speak to that because I've created them. So it's about clarity, clarity of site and operations, clarity of site costs, clarity and site of not initiatives or programs, but in terms of processes and procedures and policies. It's all about clarity. So when you ask the hard questions or deeper questions, then you have to look at decision making. Who's making the decisions? How are they making those decisions? Why are they making those decisions? Alignment on what to start and what to stop, um, and ultimately what to redesign. So my conversation is about those things, not
Hmm.
about DEI, and I'm all for the separating of that term, but it's about clarity and decision making and
Yes,
alignment and redesign of how the box is built so that the box doesn't crumble at the end of the day.
I love that. With me looking into it a little bit, I try to like I keep capturing coherence, like with what they say isn't falling in line with with what they're trying to do, and clarity is what is allow the company can to be coherent in how things are happening. So I'm glad you said clarity that it's like, yes, that's what they don't
You
want.
know, clarity brings a couple other things. It brings accountability, and that's really the
Yes.
heart of what you were talking about before. Why are leaders afraid of bringing accountability? Because at the end of the day, who is accountable? Who does what by when? I'll
Yeah.
say it again. This is a theory that I've read about and that I live by. And it helps that I happen to be an autistic person who thinks structurally, but
Yeah.
that's also why I bring this structure to organization and leaders to say who does what by when. That's a level of accountability that most leaders haven't been held to because they either didn't need to be because they've been doing it the way they've been doing it the entire time, power dynamics, etc. But that's where I come in. Who does what by when? Who's responsible for what product and by when? And that breaks down the ultimate form of clarity because when people are clear and they have a full understanding of what they're there for and the reasons that they're doing the work, then the work can get done faster and the work can get done better. That's the goal. Get work done faster and better. It can't be one or the other. It can't be just fast. I always say I'd rather have something right than fast. Speed is not the same as execution. You want speed to execution, and the way to get that is through clarity. So if I know my goal up front and I have all the tools and resources up front and I have all my questions answered up front, now that's not, I don't say that to mean that you don't move unless you have all of the information up front. That's not what that phrase is. What it is about getting to clarity so I can get the execution faster and better. So the work that I do is not training. It's not coaching. Although I have created trainings, and there's a place for that. There's a place for training. I don't disparage training because I've created neurodiversity in the workplace trainings. There's a place for training, but the key factor is not it. The key factor is not training. It's not coaching. It's not another initiative, and it's not just awareness work. It's performance. It's activating performance, and it's tied to how work actually gets done.
So when it comes to burning people out in that process, what's often connected by a bad design?
So there's the concept of, I'll give you a case in point. There are some people who think differently, who identify as ADHD and who identify as autistic. And for me, for example, one of my personal traits is that I absorb vast amounts of information quickly. So, for example, I memorized the flag of every country in the world on site in less than 30 days because I like flags and because I absorb that information. I answer Jeopardy questions more than anybody else around me that I know. I read multiple books at the same time. I have 4 books on my deck right now. I read them all at the same time. And when I tell people that, they're like,
Yes.
"Oh, how do you do it?" Well, in my videos, playback speed in videos, I have to turn it up because people talk too slow in the video for my brain to speed. So I have to speed that up. However, and that's for an example in terms of how rapid movement in brain waves. On the ADHD side, there are people that move very quickly in terms of their thinking from a creativity perspective, et cetera, et cetera. These treats and these opportunities, excuse me, we're going to have to edit that part, but ask the question again.
Oh no, we don't edit. We just flow. We just flow
Oh,
with it.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
well, ask the question one more time.
Sure. Yeah, so with I get carried away too, where I'll just
Mm,
get lost in it. But like with burning people out in the process, like what's often connected by a bad design.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So burnout. Talking about burnout. Yes. So I absorb vast amounts of information very quickly. ADHD people, a lot of times, they get a lot done in front of an output in a very short period of time. What happens in organizations from a design perspective is that people like me and people who have ADHD capabilities will be taken advantage of because they'll say, "Oh, give it to Johnny. Johnny will get everything done on a tight timeline because Johnny has the ability to do that. Oh, give it to Grant because he can read all five of these reports in half the time that Sally can. And yes, while I work that way and I have that capability, and Johnny has that capability, if we're only put in that position to operate on that level all the time, 24/7, and we don't have the opportunity to heal down, to recuperate, to rest and rejuvenate from that, it's very similar to flight or flight syndrome in the human body. If you've
Yes.
ever been in an emergency situation, your body is fight, I'm going to fight, or flight, meaning I'm going to run. And from a psychological perspective, from an emotional perspective, from a health perspective, we all know that if the body is in that state all the time,
Hmm.
then you're susceptible to illness, sickness. You die sooner, quicker, mental health, all of these things. The body degrades. Same in the workplace. Same in the workplace. So if you give someone, if you take advantage of their personal abilities and don't give them the opportunity to either try something else, to recuperate from doing that thing that they naturally can do. But just because it's natural doesn't mean it's always healthy. Just because
Yeah.
something is natural doesn't mean it's always good for you, especially if you're doing it on repeat, and the expectation is that that's who you are and that's who you show up. That's who you show up at. So from a psychological perspective, that also creates burnout because I'm like, hey, yeah, I absorb lots of information, but I also do other things. I also am capable of doing something else other than this one thing that you think that you're getting the maximum efficiency out of me for. And at that point, again, I feel like a cog in the wheel. The person feels like a
Yes.
cog in the wheel because
Yeah.
they're no longer being utilized effectively and efficiently. They're being utilized for their productivity, and
Yeah.
productivity leads to burnout. Effective and efficient does not lead to burnout.
Yeah. Wow. You hit it right on the nose. Like that was literally multiple lived experiences where I had to walk away from organizations, what you just described. That wow. Um,
And
I also listened to a podcast at a 2.5, and I'm currently reading quite a few books right now. And it's it's just how you just grown to live. The process is what helps you face on the next day because you feel like you fall back on preparation. And I don't feel like I can articulate my words if I don't read. I feel like I can't connect the dots and there's fog if I don't listen to the podcast. Like there's all a reason why we do it. We just don't do it because it's fun. It's connected to uh, being at our the top of our game. And that's what we built our life around. So it makes a lot of sense to me.
yeah, yeah. It's
Um,
all about the work plan. You know, how are we designing the work? What's the operational lift? You know, are we trying to improve skills inside something that is already broken? Because if that's the case, you're just spinning your wheels. So these are the conversations. This is the focus that the T factor brings, and there are other layers to it. But these are the conversations that I have with leaders.
I love it. As far as questions, is there any questions I've got to ask you? I mean, from what I wanted to talk about today, we hit it beyond what I was expecting this conversation to be. So, is there anything that you would like to bring up? I know you have your own organization, and I would love if you can just share a little bit about that and how our audience can find out more about you and get connected.
Big, awesome. Again, my name is Grant Harris. I am president and founder of GTH Consulting, and I am a consultant and keynote speaker on neuroinclusive performance and the future of work. And I help organizations save time, keep talent, and deliver value. So if you're interested in my T Factor, you can DM me directly on LinkedIn at Grant Harris 555. DM me T Factor, T Factor at Grant Harris 555 on LinkedIn, and I will send you a special gift. So yeah, I am glad to be here with your audience. Again, my name is Grant Harris, and thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion. And congratulations to you again on your recent achievements.
Thank you. And that's it. That's perfect. We got it.